It's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is maneuver. Let's take a moment to look at some of the definitions or the ways that we use this verb. The first way you might hear maneuver used is to mean to move skillfully or carefully. This particular verb came up quite a lot last week as a group of students and I were reading about vehicles and particularly how to best drive in the winter. So we're getting prepared for some likely snowy and icy weather in my area. And so again, there are many tips you can search on how to best maneuver in ice or snow. So want to be very careful in those kinds of conditions. A second way you'll sometimes hear the verb maneuver used is to mean to carefully guide or manipulate someone, something, or even a situation in order to achieve a particular goal. So the second definition is very different from the first. I would say there's sort of a negative connotation to it, that someone is doing something not so directly, right? They might have a particular goal, something they want to happen, but they're not just telling people or being honest about it. They're trying to do something to reach it, and maybe have others not realize that they're controlling things or directing them in this particular way. You should know that the verb maneuver is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of this verb, all you need to do is add ing to form maneuvering. The past tense and participle forms of this verb can be made by adding ed. Our base verb, maneuver, ends in a voiced R sound. So my past tense ending is just going to make a D sound. And we're not going to add an extra syllable as we say it. So it should sound like this: maneuvered, maneuvered. Okay? Now, there are a couple phrasal verbs that I'd like to discuss, and I would say both of these connect back to the second definition that we talked about. So the first you might hear is to maneuver into. This means that you are causing someone or convincing someone to do something through manipulation. And you might note my definition here says in a fraudulent way. So essentially, you're tricking them. You're doing or saying something that causes them to act in a particular way, but you're not being honest. You're not sharing all of the information that this person might need. An example with this particular phrasal verb might be: the business advisor maneuvered his way into being the executor of the elderly millionaire's estate. So here, this sentence is suggesting that this particular person, the business advisor, wasn't really honest, was somehow doing something to trick this particular millionaire who's quite old into being their executor. So they're going to be likely in charge of this very valuable estate. It might give them the ability to take money from the estate. The next phrasal verb we'll discuss is to maneuver out of. Again, very similar meaning here. So we're using manipulation in order to cause someone to lose something. An example of this might be: she has maneuvered the other competitor out of first place. Okay? So don't know what sort of competition this is, but we might think of someone using some tricks or something in order to put themselves in first place in this particular competition. Okay? Now let's continue using our verb of the day, maneuver. And today let's practice making sentences in the simple past tense and the present progressive. We'll start with the simple past tense. We use this verb tense to talk about a completed action that occurred at some known point in the past. Many times you're going to see time signals like yesterday, last month, or a particular date in the past. But time signals are not going to be in every single simple past tense sentence. Sometimes they are implied as part of a conversation or a longer passage, a longer text. The nice thing about the simple past tense is that our structure stays the same no matter what our subject is. So we're going to have our subject in the affirmative, and then we're going to have our ed form of the verb because this is a regular verb. You can see this in the example. The athlete maneuvered her way into the box for a great shot. Right? So here we might be thinking of that careful and skillful movement, maybe running around others, positioning herself in order to be able to take a shot, to kick the ball in this case. Now, if I want to make a negative sentence in the simple past tense, my structure is going to be to have my subject, then did not, and then the base verb. So notice I'm not using the ed form of the verb here. Here's another example. He lost out on a promotion because he didn't maneuver himself into social situations with senior managers enough. So in whatever organization we're talking about here, socially interacting with people kind of higher up the food chain seems to be very important. So this particular person didn't find ways to sort of interact and engage, so this person has missed out on the promotion. Finally, let's look at how we make a yes or no question in the past tense. To do this, we start with did, then we're going to have our subject, and then the base verb. Again, no ed form of the verb here in our yes or no question. We're only using that ed form in the affirmative. Here's another example. Did the car maneuver differently on ice? So here we might be asking someone what their experience was in terms of how you were able to steer or control the automobile. Now let's talk about the present progressive. Some teachers and some books refer to this as the present continuous, and that's great. It means exactly the same thing. We use the present progressive or the present continuous to talk about something that is happening right now. We also might use it to discuss an action that is in progress during a period of time that isn't finished or that hasn't been completed yet. Sometimes you will also see people use the present progressive to talk about future actions. This is most common with plans, especially plans that are really imminent. They're going to happen in the very near future. Okay? Now, the reason I like calling this the present progressive is because I have two P's. And the two P's in the name help me remember I need two parts to make my verb in the affirmative. I need the present form of be, so that's going to be am, is, or are, and then I need that ing form the verb. Here's an example sentence. The politician is maneuvering to have his protege elected. So protege here, you might think of a person they are mentoring, they're advising. Many times they're guiding this person to reach the same level, act in a similar way. So here might be leading us back more to that second definition, that someone or some groups of people are being manipulated into thinking this protege is the next best candidate or the next best leader. Okay? Now let's look at making negative present progressive sentences. To do this, we start with our subject, then we have our form of be, am, is, or are, then we use not, and then the ing form the verb. You might also hear contractions like aren't, and then the ing form the verb, or isn't, and then the ing form, but there's no contraction for am not. Here's another example sentence. These vehicles are not maneuvering on their own. So in this particular sentence, you might think of autonomous vehicles, vehicles that can be operated without humans controlling or humans interacting with it. In this particular sentence, these cars are not autonomous. Now, let's take a look at how we make yes or no questions in the present progressive. To do this, we start with a form of be, whichever form matches our subject, and that subject comes next, then the ing form of the verb. Here's another example. Is she maneuvering around with crutches? So here, that would be kind of moving carefully. It's likely what that means if someone is needing some assistance and being able to move around. Now, let's take a moment to look at some words that are related to our verb maneuver. And the first word we're going to discuss today is just the noun form of this word. Maneuver, as a noun, you might notice, has the exact same spelling and the exact same pronunciation. This noun can have several different meanings. One would be to refer to a movement or a series of movements that require skill, or maybe they require some sort of carefulness. Okay? An example of this might be a video captured the last second maneuvers a driver made to avoid a collision. Right? So some video here might show someone taking their steering wheel and turning a particular way. They made this series of movements in order to be more careful and avoid hitting someone else or perhaps another car. A second way you hear the noun maneuver used is to refer to a carefully planned scheme. Right? And scheme always has kind of a negative meaning to it. So we might kind of think back to those ideas of manipulation and tricking others. An example of this. What sort of financial maneuvers have they been making? Right? So here we might kind of be wondering, are these financial movements, these financial plans, are they okay? Are they legal? In that particular sentence. A third way to use the noun maneuver is in connection to the military. So as militaries have planned exercises, you might think of it kind of like training. Sometimes you're going to hear this noun used in connection as well. So an example here. The military started large-scale training maneuvers last weekend. Okay. Now, another related word you might hear is the adjective maneuverable. I hope you can see that suffix, A-B-L-E. So I like to tell my students whenever we see that suffix, think able to, and then look back at the root word. So here, able to be easily moved or easily steered, easily maneuvered. And generally, we're describing something that can be moved when it is in motion. An example here. This new vacuum is the most maneuverable one for hard floors. Okay? So I saw a sentence very similar to this, describing a particular product. It was part of an advertisement, getting people kind of excited to buy this particular vacuum that they found to be very easy to maneuver on like wood floors or other hard surfaces. The last word we're going to take a look at today is the noun maneuverability. So here we're referring to the ability or the fact of being easy to move into different positions. An example of this. The maneuverability of this new truck helps with backing up and parking. I feel like it's pretty common to hear this noun used in connection to vehicles, particularly stressing like new features or trying to kind of sell us on new capabilities. So you might encounter that word if you're in the market for a new car. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.